Joining me today is Jeff Feingold, who's the editor of the New Hampshire Business Review. So, Jeff, you know, I've looked online and I've seen your papers, and so I've been looking at a bunch of different stories you're following. And I'm going to throw out a couple of them, and you just sort of pick up one. The New Hampshire Banking Commission, commuter rail, and demographic, the demographic shifts in the state.
Well, yeah, the New Hampshire banking commissioner job that's an interesting one, especially for this area. That's with Senator Jerry Little, who represents many of the people watching this in the Senate. He was nominated by a Republican, was nominated by the Democratic Governor Maggie Hassan to take over the job as banking commissioner.
And he used to be.
He used to be the president of the New Hampshire, for many, many years was the president and chief lobbyist for the New Hampshire Bankers Association. And what's happened is there seemed to be some resistance on the part of actually people in the Democratic Party in particular, who are upset that the governor was nominating a Republican banking lobbyist to be the commissioner.
Yeah, and there's some, I think the Telegraph talked about the revolving door.
Yep. And actually, there's other people I've talked to who were concerned. Like they said, well, look, Bernie Sanders, look how much he won the primary by and the Democratic primary by over Hillary Clinton. And his big thing was about Wall Street and bankers and everything. And now, what are you doing here? But the interesting thing about it is the politics of it is that it has to be approved by the Executive Council, as we know, the 5-member Executive Council. And 2 of those members, Chris Sununu, a Republican, and Colin Van Oster, a Democrat, are running for governor. So we'll see, you know, is the Republican going to vote for the Republican? Is the Democrat going to support his governor? So it's going to be very interesting to see how that vote goes.
So, yeah, and it's also inside baseball, really.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's the kind of stuff, you know, it's the kind of stuff that, you know, I'm fascinated by, but most people don't really care. Although, you know, if it is your senator. It's a discussion, it's a very important commissioner.
And there's, you know, why is she appointing him? What is she trying to signal to people because she's going to run for the Senate? I mean, there's layers to this.
And one of the other big layers is that, you know, by basically eliminating a senator who's a Republican, it opens up the seat for an election, and you know, where a Democrat could actually take over that seat.
And it would be a special election?
Well,
the governor
it depends on when he gets approved, and if he doesn't get approved very shortly, there won't be a special election, which means that I guess if he does eventually get approved, there won't be a senator in the district, but because there won't be a special election, there won't be an election until November. But
so the district would go without a representative?
Apparently, that's what it sounds like. But I think I would hope that they don't leave the district, because I'm a constituent, you know? I want representation. But it's interesting that this issue has kind of got some legs. But I think it's because against the backdrop of the governor's own Senate race against
Bernie Sanders,
the whole presidential
primary
debate and everything.
And then the next 2 governors,
exactly.
The governor's race.
Exactly.
So let's go commuter rail.
Yeah.
Not something that's going to affect a lot of people in our listening area. They're probably not going to drive to Manchester to take a commuter rail to Boston. Yeah. But in the south part of the state, what's going on with a commuter rail?
Wouldn't we like to know? There's been a push to have commuter rail in the state for many, many years. And the most recent proposal was this thing they call a Capital Corridor, which originally would have gone from Boston all the way up to Concord, commuter rail. Mm-hmm. And they did various studies and found that going all the way to Concord would be economically difficult. So they said, well, about Boston to Manchester. So that's pretty much the sweet spot. And a lot of many business organizations support that in the southern part of the state. Nashua Chamber of Commerce is very much out front on it. The Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce, the same way, because they see not only in terms of economic development, but they see in terms of helping to attract a younger workforce. Because it is a fact that younger people, I know this from my own kids, they don't drive as much. You know, they want to live in cities.
There's a migration back to the city corridors.
Exactly, and if there's no rail, you know, it's just going to be harder to attract those kind of people for the jobs you want. Because that's one of the issues that New Hampshire faces, is this whole issue of demographics, and we need to get younger. That's a fact. Our workforce is getting older and older, and we need to bring that workforce, the average age of that workforce down. And the argument from the people who support rail is that will help do it.
And it'll help them expand their companies.
Absolutely, that's what they say. And there's also the associated real estate development. They say what would happen, let's say in a place like Manchester or Nashua, that wouldn't have happened without rail.
Well, it'll take years to find out, but right now we're out of
Absolutely.
time.
Okay.
So thank you so much for being
Sure.
here.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Capital Connections, your weekly access to politics and policy along the I-89 and I-91 corridors and how it impacts our life in our region. If you've got a comment or an idea for a story, please email me. And join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Capital Connections.